What is free movement and how does it benefit Hampshire citizens? This is a presentation by Mrs. C. Bradley, Director, Europe Direct, Eastleigh. Under EU law, you have 4 fundamental freedoms if you're an EU citizen. You have free movement of goods, freedom of establishment and freedom to provide services, free movement of people, and free movement of capital. So what is free movement of people? Free movement of people means you have the right to go and work in another EU member state, go and look for work in another EU member state, provided you have enough money to support yourself whilst you're looking for work, and finally go and study in another EU member state, provided you have enough money to support yourself. Do your free movement rights give you the right to freely claim benefits in another EU country? No, they don't, not unless the country that you're moving to decides to give you that option. Under EU law, in order to exercise your right of free movement, you have to be either working, studying, or looking for work. Either way, under the provisions of Directive 2004/38/EC, you're not supposed to be a drain on the state, i.e. you're supposed to be able to support yourself financially if you're not actually working. So what EU rules apply if a Hampshire citizen wants to move to another EU member state? The rules that apply will vary depending on how long you want to go for. Directive 2004/38/EC identifies 3 different scenarios that can potentially apply. You want to move to another EU country for 3 months or less, possibly to look for work. Secondly, you want to live in another EU member state for between 3 months and 5 years. And finally, you want to live permanently in another EU country. And different rules apply depending on how long you're planning on staying in the other country. Now, job seeking is permitted under Directive 2004/38. And if you're planning on job seeking for 3 months or less, then you only need your passport or some other form of ID. And you can find more information on this at http://europe.eu/right/citizens/right-pensioner/index_en.htm. Do I have an automatic right to claim benefits from the moment I move to another EU country? No, you don't. Under Article 24(2) of Directive 2004/38/EC, the host member state shall not be obliged to confer entitlement to social assistance during the first 3 months of residence, nor shall it be obliged prior to the acquisition of the right of permanent residence, note which only happens after 5 years, to grant maintenance aid for studies, including vocational training, consisting in student grants or student loans to persons other than workers, self-employed persons, persons who retain such status, and members of their families. So basically, if you move to another EU member state, that member state is not obliged under EU law to give you any form of benefits during that first 3 months. So basically, under EU law, if you're moving from Hampshire to another member state to try and find work, you're not entitled under EU law to claim benefits for the first 3 months. Almost every country in Europe has introduced legislation to reflect this requirement, so you need to make sure you have enough money to support yourself whilst you're looking for work in another EU country. Fundamentally, it's up to the individual member states to decide what benefits they allow EU job seekers to draw. Member states, including the United Kingdom, are certainly not required to provide these benefits under the EU free movement rules. In fact, it's only in the last year that the UK government has introduced legislation that curbs benefit tourism, despite the fact that it's had the power to do so since 2004. Wasn't there a case on this recently? Yes, there was. The European Court of Justice basically said that the free movement rules only kicked in if you were job seeking. If you had no intention of finding or looking for work, then you couldn't just move to another EU country simply to claim benefits. The court clarified that if you want to exercise your right of free movement, then you have to be A, looking for work, and B, have enough money to support yourself. If you're interested in reading the actual judgment, you can find the full details at http://curia.upload.curio.ce/upload/docs/application/2014-11/upload/upload/cp14016en.pdf. So if a Hampshire citizen finds work in another EU country, then what rights do they have? If a citizen of Hampshire finds work in another EU country, and they've worked there for more than 3 months but less than 5 years, then they have to register the fact they're resident in another EU country with the authorities. And to find out more on this, see http://europe.eu/citizen/worker-residence/index_en.htm. What other rights does a citizen of Hampshire have if they move to another EU member state? During your stay in your new country, you should be treated as a national of the country, notably as regards access to employment, pay, benefits facilitating access to work, enrolment in schools, etc. What happens if I lose my job when I'm living in another EU country? If you lose your job while living in another country, you can keep your right to work and live there. If you are temporarily unable to work because of illness or accident, registered with the relevant employment office as involuntarily unemployed after having been employed for over a year on an indefinite contract, or employed for less than a year on a permanent contract. In this case, you retain the right to equal treatment with nationals for at least another 6 months. Or final option, beginning vocational training. If you are not involuntarily unemployed, the training must be related to your previous job. Now, in terms of the origins of EU social policy, when the Treaty of Rome was signed in 1957, the 6 founding members were primarily focused on creating a common market. There was little concern given to social policy issues. However, it did come to be recognised that in order for the common market to work, workers had to be able to move freely. Also, the Maastricht Treaty introduced the legal concept of EU citizenship. It also created a number of new political electoral rights. Directive 2004/3/ATC consolidates, updates and replaces most of the legislation governing the rights of movement of residents of all previous categories of people enjoying such rights. It also repealed Directive 68/360, which was the previous directive that dealt with this. The most important judicial development of the legal concept of citizenship has involved the interpretation by the European Court of Justice of Articles 12 and 18 of the Treaty, in such a way that EU nationals' rights have been extended from being limited to the principle of non-discrimination to also encompassing a wide range of social rights and benefits. The Lisbon Treaty. As mentioned earlier, the concept of EU citizenship was introduced by the Treaty of Maastricht. Citizenship means that every person who is a citizen of a member state is automatically a citizen of the European Union. EU citizenship does not replace national citizenship, but instead confers on EU citizens certain additional rights. It's complementary to, it doesn't replace national citizenship. That can't be taken away. Citizenship and free movement are linked because EU citizenship is a source of free movement rights. And the rights of EU citizens are specifically listed in the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. So what rights do you have as an EU citizen? You have the right to move and reside freely within the EU. You have the right to vote for and stand as a candidate in EU elections. You have the right to be protected by the diplomatic and consular authorities of any EU country. And you also have the right to petition the European Parliament and complain to the European Ombudsman. Now, EU citizens are entitled to other rights, including the right to contact an EU institution and receive a response in one of the EU's official languages, the right to access European Parliament, European Commission and Council documents, the right of equal access to the EU civil service, and the treaty also prohibits discrimination on the grounds of nationality. So where can I find details of my citizens' rights? You can find details of your citizens' rights at http://europa.eu/your-euro. Solvit is another good service to know about. It helps citizens uphold their citizenship rights. So if any of your free movement rights are being restricted, particularly by a public authority, for imposing requirements that they don't have the right to actually impose under EU law, then Solvit can help. And it's a free service, and they aim to informally sort the problem out within 10 weeks. So if you're having problems invoking your citizens' rights, Solvit can always certainly help. If you want more information on this, then go to http://eastleigh.europa.eu/solvit/site/about/index_en.htm. And Europe Direct also helps inform citizens of their rights, and if anyone would like to, any citizens of Hampshire want to contact us with regard to any of these rights, they can do so via the website, which is http://www.europedirect-eastleigh.org.uk. Since the Treaty of Lisbon, free movement rights have been linked to citizenship rights. This means that EU social policy is not limited to categories of people, but in fact it affects everybody who's a citizen of the EU. Know your rights. It's taken 60 years of political bickering, judicial activism by the ECJ, and the development of human rights in the wider world for these rights to be created and developed. Given how hard it's been to earn them, make sure you use them. Travel to other countries in Europe, go and find work in other countries in Europe, retire in a nice sunny place like Spain or Cyprus or wherever. You have these rights, make sure you use them. Thank you.